Okay, so good evening. We'll begin tonight's meeting call to order at 5:04. And we'll begin with adoption of the agenda. Is there anything from admin?
No, your worship.
Any additions from council? Okay. Councillor Wilhelm.
A motion that council adopts the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes for 1st of February 2023. Any errors or omissions? Councilor Cush.
I'll move the minutes of February 1st, 2023 as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. All right. We'll go into 5.1. That is our schedule of fees bylaw. If I can get this open. Corinne, you gonna take us through this?
Certainly. Council at Governance and Priority Committee meeting on January 16th, the committee reviewed revised schedule of fees related to planning and development fees. Those are here for first, second, and hopefully third reading of bylaw 596. And I will note that the recommendation in the third reading, there is an error. It says 593, and that should be 596.
Third reading.
The bottom line of the recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Dean?
I'd be prepared to make a motion to give first reading, but I just want to get a feel from council whether or not they feel the $2,500 fee for natural resource extraction is sufficient. And a question to admin, if this schedule is passed, what's the period when it could then be amended if necessary?
Amended again, like
Yeah.
further at any time that
Or
council.
at any time, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we all looked at this, I think we all thought it was fine, and I'm good with it as well, but I do know that our neighbors have a significantly different fee for NRE, and I just think it's something that council should discuss. I don't think it necessarily needs to hold this up, though.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cokin?
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Dean on that point as well. Is the amount of work that our admin team puts in on some of these is pretty significant, and I don't really think that $2,500 is sufficient. So just keep that in the back of our minds, I believe.
Fair enough. Yeah, and we do have a significant development coming up that's brought a couple of those things to light, so points well taken. Any other comments on this?
I guess comment question, I'd like to have a little deeper discussion about that, and perhaps we could push it to a GNP meeting. Like the way I see this going down is we'll approve this, but then push that specific item to a GNP at a later time. So if everybody's would agree with that, then perhaps a motion after this, after the third final reading to push that specific section of the schedule to a GNP. Does that make sense?
Yep, that certainly works fine by me. That'll work procedurally.
Okay, then
If this gets passed. We'll see how it goes.
Let's see, I'll start it off. I move that council gives first reading of bylaw 596/23, amending schedule of fees.
Okay, motion for first reading. Any discussion on the motion?
Sorry.
Councillor Cush, did you?
No, I was just jumping.
Oh, you're jumping, okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion the council gives second reading to bylaw 596/23, amending schedule of fees.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that is carried. Counselor Prestige.
I'll make a motion that council proceeds with third and final reading of bylaw 596/23, amending schedule of fees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? And just procedurally, since we're doing all three at one time here, we need unanimous consent on this one from council to go to third reading. With no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? I see none opposed. I'll accept the motion to go to third. Councilor Copen.
I make a motion that council gives third reading to bylaw 593-22, amending the schedule of fees.
596.
That's the glitch.
Oh, 96, I'm sorry.
Just restate the whole
Yeah,
thing.
the council gives third reading to bylaw 596-22, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That will bring us to item 7.
Excuse me,
Well, our
Mr. Chair.
delegation, actually.
Do you want me
Oh,
to read
yes,
that
I'm
motion?
sorry. You were gonna go with that motion. Go ahead.
So I will move that council discuss section 1B, what is this? 1B4, natural resource extraction, at a GMP meeting to be determined later.
Okay. Councilor Preston.
Through the chair, I think we need some more information on that too. We have the cost of our neighbors, what they charge, but we should get information on a bunch of other municipalities, what they're charging.
Yeah, of course.
So I think we should have that meeting, or that information at the GMP.
Did you want the motion amended to include that? I just assumed that that would be part of it.
I amended to include that.
If you'll accept it as a friendly, so you're asking for a friendly amendment to
Yes.
include that information?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Do you have that?
I'm just gonna ask the, Corinne, she's typing that.
That council direct administration to gather information from other municipalities related to section 1B4 natural resource extraction and forward to a future governance and priorities committee meeting for discussion.
Perfect.
Is that the motion you made? Very good.
Blended.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Wilhelm?
I don't want to amend the motion, but just for administration, I think probably a key piece of information we could have for that discussion too is what the costs of these natural resource extraction businesses are to the community, so we can do kind of cost benefit analysis on how much should we go up to increase these fees for these types of situations. Because we might not want to go to what our neighbors are doing, but we might want to find a perfect price point there that's going to make sense to get some costs back on these. So we don't have to amend anything, I just will put that out there.
Okay. All right, any other comments on the motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Just want to check what time our delegation is here. 5:45.
5:45.
Oh, a long way yet. Let's go to item 7.1, septic disposal options. It's gonna be Steve. Coming on internet. Mr. Hollett, you want to take us through this one?
To the Reading Council, administration was asked to look at several different options for septic disposal. One of the options we looked at was upgrading to county lagoons to accept septic waste. The study that we've done by Stantec a while ago, it looks like it'd be roughly about between 3 to 4.5 million to do the upgrades that we would need to accept it. One of the other options we looked at were to dump into the town's facilities. I spoke to a representative of the town of Whitecourt, and they're not interested in taking anything outside of their town limits at this time. Another option was maybe looking at the airport accept septic waste. When that system was designed, there was nothing ever made for it to actually accept septic waste up there. So with the way the system is set up, there's just no way that that could actually work out. And the other, we also called a bunch of local septic haulers, and we found the price is reasonable, between say $450, $500 a load. They keep it pretty much standard with anything in the area. And the rationale, an investment of $4.5 million would take about 20 to 30 years to get that money back. So we recommend that accept this as information.
Okay. Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to Steve, the Rockford Bridge one, is that County of Lac St. Anne's?
Through the chair to Council Prestige, yes.
And does the county of Lac St. Anne, do they have a facility that's all rigged to take that in? So my understanding of this is that under the new requirements, you've got to put this into kind of a capture when they dump the truck, analyze what it is, make sure there's no petroleum distillates or anything else in it, that it's all organics.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna flush that chamber out into the system from then, where you're gonna have to take it away again. Is that the idea?
Yes.
So that's our $3 to $5 million or $3 to $4.5 million upgrade?
There's a bit more for us to upgrade our lagoons to that. You need power to the site. You need actually to increase our lagoons, because the lagoons are only set up to handle from our hamlets. So to put any more load on those, we would need to basically redesign them and rebuild how they actually work right now.
Okay, and Lac St. Anne has that system?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Councillor Wilhelm.
When the cost review was done by Stantec, was there any, did we look into any provincial grant funding or anything for doing those types of upgrades? Is there anything available? Did we look?
There is possibly some, but nowhere near to take up the majority of the cost.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Cush.
I know we've been talking in the past that we gotta do some of the capital upgrades and stuff at the site there in Blue Ridge already. Would any of that overlap into this $3 to $4.5 million, or would this be on top of anything that we'd have to do, I guess, upgrade wise to our current facility?
Through the chair to Councillor Cush, anything that we need to do with that lagoon is, right at the moment, it's actually holding pretty good. We don't need to do anything with it right at the moment, other than maybe look at removing the sludge from the first cell. But actually physical, there's nothing that needs to be done at this moment.
I'll ask one more question. The town's system, is the town system set up like Lac St. Anne's system to accept that waste from their home?
From my way of seeing that, the way the town is, no. They just pump directly upstream to capture into their waste treatment center.
But they accept waste into theirs? Like
With-
they'll dump a truck into theirs?
Within the town of Whitecourt.
Councillor Prestige.
I believe with the town, they take their sewage and treat it. And then they take the sludge out after, but then it goes back into the river.
Yeah.
Where our lagoons, you just pump it into the lagoons after you kind of treated it. So they would have more treatment to do to get it back, so it could go back in the river.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to administration, I don't see in the background, but how did this RFD come? Like, why are we looking at this RFD?
Through the chair, Councilor Wilhelm, there was a notice of motion, I believe, at 2 meetings ago to bring this item back.
Oh, okay.
This has been an ongoing believe this stopped, the town used to accept waste up until 2014. And then they stopped accepting it. And we ended up having to find other means. So this is kind of a legacy thing that followed along with us, and it pops up from time to time to time. And I had a few inquiries on it as well, and I'm trying to see with the way things are going with the town and everything else. We never sat down and tried to really find a workaround on this before, so I thought it was time to ask a question too. That's why I did that inquiry. Councillor Dean, did you have your hand? No. Okay, Councillor Bush.
I was just gonna say, given a $3 to $4.5 million upgrade, we unfortunately don't have that to inject into this. It would be nice to be able to take the septic from our own residents, but currently that's just not in the plans. I would like to make a motion that council accepts the septic disposal options as information.
Thanks, Councillor Cush. Any discussion on Councillor Cush's motion? Councillor Dean?
I think just an information piece, and perhaps for Councillor Wilhelm, you're asking about, how this came to be. There would be a cost if a resident of the county in this area, if the town did accept, there certainly would be a cost. But the trucking required to get it from Whitecourt to Rochford Bridge is added into that cost that Mr. Hollick mentioned at $450 to $500. So it's not like that $500 is going to go down to zero. But if you don't have to truck it that far, obviously you're not going to pay as much. So I heard what Reed mentioned, that perhaps there would be an opportunity to find out a little bit more information from the town.
Okay, still a motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Steve. That will bring us to item 8.2, letter of support for the Camrose Resort Casino. Heather.
This one.
Sorry, did I say 8.1? Yep, sorry, 8.1. 8.1 would be the board member requests, Barrhead and District FCSS.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So the Barrhead and District FCSS board met they have a nomination committee, and they've decided that they'd like to reach out to us and see if there's interest in having someone sit on their board as they cover the Fort Assiniboine and Goose Lake areas. This is just their first initial, would you be interested? And then at their AGM in April, then they would review their terms of reference and their bylaws to include that at that time. So this is basically just a informal, hey, do you want to be a part of this and have someone sit on the board?
Councillor Cush.
Given that we do provide funding and they are active in the areas I don't think this would be a bad idea for one of our counselors who are in those areas anyways to sit on the board and kind of see where the funds are going to or what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think as a bit of a change or strategic direction that we're going into as well, as a county, we wanted to take more of an active role in our FCSS and our social programs as well. So it looks like it'll be aligned with that, as long as we have a counselor that's available. Everybody's getting pretty busy these days. Anyone care to? Councillor Wilhelm?
I think my only comment on it is, I don't think I would volunteer for this simply because Barrhead FCSS doesn't fall in the area that I'm in, but $12,500 per year is a significant investment into the Barrhead FCSS. What would be the time commitment from a counselor to be involved in that group for this dollar figure that we're committing towards them, right? Like we commit bigger dollar figures to community groups in the area that we don't have to provide a counselor to be on their committees either. So if somebody wants to do it, I would never argue against them going on it, but again, like you said, we all sit on several committees already. Do we need to add another one where we don't even have a significant investment into that program?
Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Through the chair to council, I guess. Councillor Wilhelm raises an interesting point. I hadn't really considered that. But are these meetings monthly?
Yes, and she said through the chair to Councillor Dean, they do meet monthly, but she said sometimes they meet every second month, so it's not.
Sure.
It's not a huge.
But the meeting site is outside the municipality, so there will be an honorarium, there will be mileage at the end of the day. That cost is gonna be pretty close to what we contribute. I hadn't considered that before. I think it's good food for thought.
Yeah. Would there be an honorarium for that? There would.
Yeah. So outside
Yeah,
the
for
municipality.
for the value you're starting to deduct, you're taking away from the,
Probably about $3,500 a year, roughly it.
yeah. Councillor Colkin.
Through the chair to Heather, my question actually would be more in what is it that we as a councillor would be able to contribute to make that program better? Because it's not just the dollar amount for the honorarium as far as I'm concerned, but that 12,500 is leveraged to a great degree. And so, our money leverages a lot of other dollars, and that's what we would be overseeing. So, what, if I was a committee member, what would I be able to contribute to that board that would make the social part of the program better?
Through the chair to Councillor Kluken, from what I understand, what they were talking about and looking at was it would be something very similar to, say, the Community Services Committee with the town. You'd be representing the needs, the wants, the residents of the county in that area, trends, and just have a person on, when they're making decisions on how the programming they do and how they do that. I do work with them, with Karen and the rest of them, so that I know what they're doing. I know that other things that are happening, but I don't have a say in the programming they provide. Sitting on the board provides you knowledge, insight that you can bring back to council and to administration. That would be my opinion.
This one I could honestly go either way on. Councillor Williams.
I was gonna say, I'd be willing to sit on it if council thinks that there's some value in that, but I'm kind of the same. I didn't really think about what Councillor Wilhelm said or think about that side of it, so I'm easy either way.
Councillor Colkin.
Well, I think that we have to look at it from that leveraging perspective, because what do we contribute to growth? And yet we were able to leverage $300,000 to do economic development in this area. So it's a bigger picture item than what we're actually seeing right here. So I guess the decision has to be, are we willing to invest another $3,500 to leverage those dollars? That's my...
I'm gonna go with Councillor Williams and Councillor Prestage.
I was just gonna say, I don't know what Heather thinks of it, but I know the FCSS in that area does do a very good job, and I don't ever hear of any problems with it currently, but we maybe need somebody to represent more, but maybe she has some more information than I've had.
Do you want to follow up on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Williams, yes, I believe they do, and what we could do with this is their AGM is not until April, so we could bring their board to a meeting or some way that you can discuss with them, or I could just put you in touch with some of their board members. You can talk about what they do, their decisions, like really what the time commitment would be to invest in this. I mean, that might be and help her to, if you're sitting on the fence, to knock you off the fence, maybe?
Councillor Crestage.
Through the chair to council and administration. I don't think it's so much about $3,500. Is if we have a council member on that board and it can benefit our residents because we have a council member on that board, and it's worthwhile.
Councillor Kuchen.
Yeah, with, through the chair, I would suggest then, that Heather's approach would be in our best interest to have somebody from FCSS come, show us, their leveraging power, the services that they deliver. Because then, when we make that investment, we'll have a way better idea. So I would be willing to make a motion that we, get administration to get that information from FCSS and bring it to a delegation or whatever at council so that we can have a better idea.
Okay. I'll look to see if we captured the motion.
Yeah, because it's on the book, so you have to deal with it. So motion to postpone this item for a future meeting, inviting the FCSS representatives to the Barrhead for discussion.
Okay, and if I could speak to the motion as well, I know we had a needs assessment that we had just completed. And I can't remember how, have we looked at how that dovetails together with the Barrhead area, and is there?
They're still
We're
mapping.
not quite there yet, are we? When would that be completed, and when would we have the information that meshes with those two things? How long, I'm just trying to get the timeline for the postponement.
They're saying March, April.
When's the AGM for them?
April 20th.
And they'd need to approve the board position for us for the AGM, at the AGM.
Through the chair to all of council, that's where they would be able to change their bylaws.
Right.
Is not that AGM. In terms of reference.
Councillor Tolkien.
Through the chair, Heather, would it be possible to have them come to our next council meeting or at least one in March so that we can make a decision then?
Through the chair to Councillor Cook, and I can invite them for sure. I can't guarantee, but I will invite them.
Okay.
Do it like
So, do you want to read the motion, or do we need to clean this motion up?
That council postpones Barrhead FCSS board member request to invite Barrhead FCSS as a delegation at a future council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Wilhelm.
Just for clarification to administration, our current FCSS agreement with them, that expires this year, end of this year?
No.
That's correct.
Does it expire? Oh.
There's an agreement that's in here somewhere.
December 31st, 2023.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, we just have a motion on the floor still. Anyone wish to speak to the motion further? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, now we get to the letter of support for the Camrose Resort Casino. And this is going to be Heather, yeah.
Through the chair to all of council, before you is a request for a letter of support in regards to the Camrose Resort Casino. They made a request to the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Board to relocate their casino in Camrose to Edmonton. They were struggling financially. Unfortunately, that request was denied. So this is actually gonna have a huge impact on a lot of our community groups that utilize casinos to supplement their operations and their organizations. So RMA, the letter was attached, the email that we received. They're encouraging municipalities to write letters of support to a repeal decision that the Camrose Resort Casino has applied for. There is a draft letter also attached to this RFD that we could send, just showing our support in that appeal. Our community groups would be impacted by this. If the move happens, if the appeal is overturned, this will benefit our groups. Currently, right now, a lot of our groups wait up to 2 years to get on the list, and they don't make a lot of money at the Camrose Casino, but in the Edmonton casinos, they make more money. So they'll have they won't have to wait as long to have a slot, and the return will be bigger. So this does have an impact on a lot of our community groups.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to administration. So our group does casinos all the time, and we've got quite a few of our smaller communities do them as well in around Woodlands and North, and we always have to go to Grand Prairie. We never get to go to Edmonton or Camrose.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, there is a few of our groups that do go to St. Albert. I don't know of anyone offhand that has gone to Camrose, but Eagle Tower Victim Services usually gets St. Albert or into, I think they've gone to Camrose maybe once. So there are a few. I'm not sure exactly how they separate that and where they go, but.
My understanding as well is that it's not based on the casino that you go to. It's all pooled together, so it doesn't matter which casino you go to.
No, through the chair to Councillor Willem, that's not what that is our understanding as well. There is a breakdown in this sheet that shows you ones that have larger events and have larger, for instance, like poker games and such like that, they yield higher rewards that is then split. So what happens is the casino itself, that is the pool that's shared, but some casinos get larger events and have a larger payout than other ones. There is a breakdown. I'm sorry, I should have told you which page. I think there is one here about that it shows the proceeds of events and which one goes where?
About the fifth slide.
The fifth slide?
Fort McMurray and Edmonton, Calgary as well. Are a few big ones.
And through to the chair, 12 council as well. Okay. Something that we need to consider is they are closing if they don't move. So we are not only potentially losing, like we have an increase if they move, but if they don't, we're losing a casino that our community groups could go to.
Councillor Williams.
I think if we did lose that, it just puts more pressure on the other casinos, makes the wait time longer. Even if you don't go there, you're still gonna lose out at some point, so I'd make a motion that council directs administration to send a letter of support in favor of Camrose Resort Casino's appeal of relocation to Edmonton to Alberta Gaming Liquor and Cannabis.
Okay, thank you. Motion's accepted. Just one other comment on this. The draft letter that we have, it doesn't CC any of the other communities, and I know we've been getting copies of all those letters. So I think it's, I want to make sure that this goes out to all these
We can add that.
municipalities. Does that need to be in the motion, or does it need to be just as an information note to make sure that they get included in the, once it gets sent out, it gets fanned out to those communities?
Council gets a copy of the letter as well.
Right. So I just want to make sure that the other councils are brought together, because a lot of those municipalities are neighboring, so. With that, is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. We end up with, oh boy. DML Property Request. That is Andre.
Your worship, members of council, administration received a written request from Mr. O'Brien requesting to assume control of a portion of DML 150511, which is identified on attachment B, the area that he's interested in. The DML consists of 143.37 acres located along the banks of the Athabasca. It was obtained by the county in 2017 as an expiry of 2042, and it was obtained as part of the Recreation Master Plan. And the plan was that eventually there would be a path constructed along the roadway as much as possible that would extend from the town to the proposed recreation site. And that would include the existing boat launch. The final approval for the DML division rests with the province of Alberta. However, Mr. O'Brien owns and operates the existing campground essentially at the southeast corner of Fort Assiniboine, and is requesting the additional property to expand his site. It's currently operating at capacity. Administration is recommending that if council does approve dividing the DML, that the county retain a 10-meter wide strip along the roadway, which would allow construction of the path at a future date as identified in the recreation plan. That page from the recreation plan is included in the RFD. And to ensure the property is used as identified and approved, recreation plan by Woodlands County would be required prior to the county permitting to the DML being severed. The recommendation, there are two. One, that council approves the transfer of the requested section of the DML, less a 10-meter wide area along the roadway, pending a recreation plan approved by Woodlands County. And that council directs administration to collect all expenses from Mr. Bryan related to the separation of DML 150511, including but not limited to surveys, consultant fees, and legal fees. I should also add that Mr. O'Brien is in attendance at the meeting if there are any questions.
Any questions to admin on this? Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So through to admin, first of all, what does DML stand for? Something lease?
That is, through the chair, that's a great question.
Okay, not important, I guess, that's okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, it is actually in the background section. Under the first paragraph, you'll see it's noted there under a reference. So DML is actually Commercial Industrial Miscellaneous Lease.
Okay, thank you. Second question, so the motions that are written out here as part of the recommended action talks about approving the transfer of. So I understand there's a process because it's a DML, it's not like a regular piece of private property. Do we have an approximate value for this? Do we know what this is worth?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, we don't own the property, it's Crown land. So we are just stewards of it and have approval to retain it for recreational purposes. So we don't have a value of that parcel.
Okay, because I note in the letter from Mr. O'Brien, he says, I'm open to sit down with the county and discuss price on property or work in lieu of. So is the expectation that we would ask Mr. O'Brien to simply pay for the transfer process, or is there a value that we'd be asking as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, in discussions with Mr. O'Brien, we did touch on having him clear the pathway or proposed pathway section. There were no, the discussion did not center around any monetary values. The train of thought was that this would come to council to see if there is an appetite to sever that DML and let a portion go. And if there wasn't, that would be the end of it. If there is an appetite, then we would do further work.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
I know Al a bit, and I think he does a fantastic job down there at this campsite. The only question that I had was, I don't know if this is probably doesn't come up very often, but I did ask a few residents and nobody knew anything about this. And it's not, we're not in camera, we're not anything, so do we usually do any public consultation before we make up these decisions? Only to, because we're gonna be affecting people. The last one went really good, so, and we got lots of people out, but, just a question on that, I guess. Not sure you can answer that.
Administration?
Your worship, members of council, if council believes that there's merit in before disposing of the property or considering disposing of the property, including any value relating to it, further investigation and consultation can be held with the public.
Councilor Preston?
Through the chair to administration. If this isn't our land, we're just a steward of it, what gives us the right to give it to somebody else?
Through the chair,
Shouldn't it be the province that decides whether to give it to somebody else?
through the chair to Councilor Prestige, the province does have final say. If Mr. O'Brien did go to the province and request it, we would have the say whether we want to or not. So before the province gets involved, that's why administration is seeking clarification if council wants to divest of this one piece before we get the province involved.
So just ask another question on that. So if we say go ahead with it, the province still has the final say and they could say no.
Through the chair to Councilor Prestige, that's correct.
Okay.
Just following up on that, can the province charge a fee for the land?
Through the chair, Your Worship.
Chair to the chair, it's okay.
Yeah.
I get confused too.
Going from memory, I am thinking our costs were roughly, I want to say $13,000 in that area to get the DML. So would the province charge a fee for it? Probably administrative fee.
Councilor Wilhelm and Councilor Fulton.
Just reading through the letter, something highlighted for me. He said he's having dealt with 3 floods over the years. Is this in a floodplain area? Are they allowed to do any development in that area?
Your worship,
Joe, yeah, you know what's flood mapping.
Through the council to, through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm. It's not a mapped flood hazard area. However, there is historical data that shows that that area is in floodway, flood fringe area. Development would have to meet our land use bylaw, which means nothing permanent can be developed on that particular parcel. And the province, of course, takes those uses into consideration when they're looking at properties and whether they dispose of them or not.
Okay, Councilor Culkin.
Yeah, I'm just a bit confused as well because, you know, till this came to, our meeting, I was not really aware of all of this. And when I look at this, I would like to ask Mr. Bashan that right across from the nuisance grounds, you have a parking area and then there's a boat launch, which is included in that map that you have there. And so, you know, what would that effect be? What would happen there?
Sure, Councilor Culkin, can you repeat that?
The right across from the old nuisance grounds there, where the parking lot for the boat launch area is, and there's also the boat launch that goes through that mapped area. And it's, I guess if you look at 19, 21, 26, it's in the right along the roadway that goes through to actually connects with the river on the south of the map here. Well, there's a boat launch there.
Right.
And like, how would that, like, what would the status of that be?
through the chair, Council Colgan, the remainder of the DML, that whole area to the southeast would remain as is. It wouldn't impact. The portion Mr. O'Brien is looking at, if you look at that map, is that purple-orange area to the top left.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Dean.
I'm struggling with this a little bit, just from a point of view that, with all due respect to Mr. O'Brien, he runs an excellent operation by all accounts. I've never heard anything but fantastic things about his campground. We haven't, as a council, really looked at this area within the scope of a rec master plan. And while I can see it makes sense because it's right beside that existing campground, we haven't even had any discussions about what we might want to do with this other than a walking path. And I don't know what options are. If it's within the floodway and the flood fringe, then clearly there's restrictions on there. But I don't know what we can do, and I don't know what, as I say, how this might fit into a rec master plan. I'd need more information before I'd be prepared to go ahead and approve transfer of a lease that we have in a recreational area.
Councillor Kush.
I just feel that, if somebody wants to take on the cost of developing it as, we'll say the expansion of the campground there, the campground's already operating at capacity. If, it is a lease, it's not like it's our property that we can, sell the title to somebody else as it is. Even if we could, nobody could build anything on it for what, for any type of permanent structure, as Joan relayed to you there. And I don't see us financially putting the money into this if we were to develop it as our own campsite. If we were able to transfer, if council or was good with it, just the fact, like I said, you already are operating at capacity, having more people in the area, it's good for the community. It helps bring more people in there. It helps generate more revenue. Some of the stores and the diners and stuff that are there. It's a beautiful community to help highlight. I understand that, again, this is a transfer of the profits, does have the final say. But given that you can't really develop it for anything else, and the fact that what he has is already there, I'm willing to make a motion that council approves the transfer of the requested section of DML 150511, less a 10-meter wide area along the roadway pending a recreational plan approved by Woodlands County.
Okay, the motion's accepted. Any discussion on the motion, Councillor Prestige?
My only concern, through the chair to council and administration, my only concern is this is public land. And we're saying this group can take it. Now, are we gonna get any pushback from other groups that could say, well, we wanted it too? So that's all I'm scared about. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do, but I don't want to see a bunch of backlash from it.
Councillor Culkin, then Councillor Dean.
Yeah, I through the chair to council and administration, I don't disagree with Mr. Kush's comments at all. But I do have to agree with Mr. Prestige, is that particular stretch of area is crown land and would be open for development for any other purpose. So I will direct this question to administration. What is the process for us to do this in a way that allows that open transparency?
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Kush, Culkin, is that the process would be we would give notice to the province that we have an intended transfer of property, notifying them in regards to allowing that transfer to be severance out of that whole thing, the DML. And then we would begin their process with public land or forestry, whatever the appropriate department is, and begin that process. Is there a need or an opportunity, I guess is the better term, to have public consultation that you're considering it? You could do that as part of your process.
Okay. Still have a motion on the floor to approve. Councillor Dean.
I just want to follow up on what Councillor Prestige and Councillor Colkin is saying. I can't support this motion just because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't have that information in front of me. If we could amend the motion to include a public consultation process to allow other people to, potentially put a plan together, then I think we're giving the public the opportunity that they deserve. As Councillor Williams said, I'm not sure how many people are paying attention to this meeting. I don't know how many people are aware of this. And if we start this process without allowing the public their due information, then I don't think we're doing the right thing.
Thanks, Councillor Dean.
So I guess what I'm saying is if we could amend the motion to include a public consultation process, then I could support the motion, but the way it sits right now, I can't.
Okay, I just want to be clear on the motion, because I think the motion is to approve the transfer, is it not?
It's to approve the transfer as noted.
So, to approve the transfer, how do you add a public?
Well, I don't know what that looks like.
And it's not, it just as a matter of process, it's not unheard of, or it's perfectly acceptable to vote against the motion and reintroduce the motion to hold a public hearing along these lines, but I don't know that, just as a matter of process, I don't know that you could amend that motion in such a way that the process has a public hearing in it, with it being to approve the transfer. So we have to.
Fair enough, yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that council understands what's going on in the process. So if you want the public hearing, you have to defeat the motion and then introduce the public hearing. Councillor Cush.
I was just gonna say, would an amendment be that, could you just add at the end pending a public hearing as well? Do we already have pending a rec plan approved by Woodlands County and pending a public hearing?
Your worship, through to council, is the easier way is to consider transferring the property subject to public consultation and then bringing it back to council for further discussion. So you almost have to either vote on the motion and have it defeated as the Reeve has indicated previously, or withdraw the motion and then have another motion for the consideration, because a friendly amendment wouldn't be approved.
It changes the intent of the motion too much. Friendly amendments are just designed to add a little bit, so yeah, I'll come back to the original mover.
I'll withdraw the motion then if you want.
Okay, that motion's withdrawn then. Do you want to introduce another motion, or?
I'll introduce one that counts,
To consider transferring the proposed property subject to.
The council will consider transferring the requested section of DML 150511, plus a 10-meter wide area along the roadway pending a rec plan approved by Woodlands County in a public hearing.
Your worship, is it a public hearing or a public consultation? I would
Public
say
consultation.
Public
Thank you.
consultation?
Public consultation.
Okay. All right, well, just as a matter of process, we'll make sure the motion's captured. Can you read the motion back, just to make sure?
Sorry.
That council, oops, sorry. that council considers transferring the requested section of DML 150511 less a 10-meter wide area along the roadway pending a recreation plan approved by Woodlands County and hosting public consultation.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I just, I don't want to send the wrong signal to the applicant. I can call Mr. O'Brien an applicant. I think council recognizes the value of extending that, his campground, but I just think that we need to go through our due process. So it's, certainly, I'm not speaking against the concept of expanding that campground. I just think we have other people that we need to consider before we can go ahead and approve it.
Thanks, Councillor Dean, for adding that. Yeah, this isn't an easy job sometimes, so. Is there any other, anyone wish to speak to the motion? With that, I don't see anyone, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we won't have any need for the second one on there yet.
That's correct, Your Worship.
That completes item 8.3. We're at 6 o'clock, so
Your Worship, your delegation isn't in a hurry, but if you want to do the two items and then go into closed session, and then it's entirely up to you, but you would have to go into closed session, then come back out.
well, we'll end up in closed session anyways. Are you sure you're not in a hurry?
I'm fine, yeah,
You're
whatever.
good? Okay. Let's do the two last, and then we'll go into closed for our delegation. Excuse me. So that'll be item 8.4, food purchase. Andre, are you gonna take us through this one? Oh, nope, sorry, Richard. One time I didn't let the RFD load. Go ahead, Richard.
Sorry, I'm not sure which one we have up first.
We're on the 5 3/4 ton pickup trucks.
Okay. Okay, to Reeve and Council, if you guys have read through, I've got the results. We had a tender go out for quotes on some pickup trucks, 5 3/4 tons. And you can see the results that showed up there. I don't know, do you have any questions on what any of the numbers there first before we proceed?
Councillor, through the chair.
To Mr. Clark, the St. Albert Dodge, is that just because they only had one truck available?
They had one on the lot ready to go, and he wasn't confident giving a quote on trucks that they'd have to order in. All the other guys were able to provide the 5 at a future date.
Thank you.
Councillor Dean.
I note that we have 3 quotations from the Hemi platform, but we only have 1 from the Ford. And the rationale for recommendation was that they wanted to go away from that Hemi platform. I'm just wondering why there weren't other Ford quotes requested.
I honestly can't say. We did contact the local guys just to give them the heads up. It was advertised in all the papers.
Okay.
Anywhere there's, and then we also advertised on the Alberta Purchasing Connection.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of them are struggling with getting the product. Like Chevy GM didn't even want to respond because they said it'll be a next year's product. So
Sure.
they didn't even
Okay.
entertain it. It's
Makes sense.
the supply demand thing, I think.
I was gonna say maybe we should ask Joan about a fleet, but,
I'll rent it to you.
any other questions on this? Councillor Kush?
I just want to point, I do understand that the Ford pricing over St. Albert Dodge is about $500 more per truck, but it's also nice keeping the money a little bit more localized and sending it off too.
Well, and there's warranty that comes with these as well, so we're working with the warranty and recall and everything with that local dealership, is that correct?
Through the Reeve and Council, not totally. If we have purchased vehicles from Calgary, Edmonton, and whenever warranty comes up, any of the local dealerships deal without warranties, so we don't have to go back to the original supplier.
Okay. Counselor Williams?
I'd be prepared to go with the recommendation that council approves the purchase of 5 3/4 ton trucks from Whitecourt Ford for the amount of $355,666.25 plus GST.
Counselor Prestige, oh, sorry, that motion's accepted. Counselor Prestige speaking to the motion.
Through the chair to Richard, is this price locked in, or are we gonna have a cost increase when we show up, like a lot of the places are doing?
No, this, or through the revamp council, this is a quote that's good for, I believe, 90 days. So that's a firm price.
Good. Counselor Colkin?
Yeah, this was part of our capital budget for this year. And the discussion, I believe, that was around the table when we did that budget was it was going to be a struggle to get those vehicles. And so I think we have an opportunity right now. And when I look at the price, it's not one that I would get. So I support the motion.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Counselor
Through the
Prestige?
chair, through Richard, are we still getting a municipal discount, or is that gone?
Through the revamp council, that has not come back yet. I think that disappeared 2 years ago, and that none of the manufacturers are able to offer that yet. So that's probably the biggest change we're actually seeing in our prices for trucks that we've purchased, is that discount is not available from the government yet.
I gotta ask just one question. The engines that are in the Fords, what are they?
They are, where's the notes on that one? Okay, I don't have that one here. That is based on one of their existing motors that they have had out. I don't know that we've had more than 1 or 2 of them in the past, but historically they've been okay. We're more so looking at the history of the Hemis, the ones we've got in the shop right now that we've been having a lot of headaches and costs. I think one of them was 118,000 kilometers that got the new motor. We've changed another motor. So we've done 2 this winter. And there's a third one we're kind of waiting to have it pop up as well. So hasn't been a good run with those ones so far.
Okay. So, sorry, is it this? Are they still making the 6.2 or are these the 10s?
I think it's a 6.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just an overly detailed question. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I don't see anyone, and last chance. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We got one more. And that is going to be the cabin chassis. Richard, you gonna do this one as well?
Sure. Through the revamp council, we have here a similar process. We went out for quotes on some cabin chassis trucks. We didn't have quite the same interest, I guess, as the other ones, but we did get one again from Ford and Dodge as well. You can see the numbers there, and also the delivery date is a fair bit different on those as well. However, the Dodge does not have the Hemi in it. This one has a Cummins turbo diesel in it, so we're a little more confident in that one. And just, I guess, the pricing, the delivery, everything about it was within our specs.
Okay. Councillor Kush?
I'll move the council approves the purchase of 1 cabin chassis truck from Courtesy Chrysler for the amount of $79,775 plus GST.
Thank you, Councillor Kush. I just have one question on this one. So, we're in a weird time now. We used to buy diesels because they had a ton more power than the gasoline engines and the fuel was cheap. Now, the maintenance is horrific on the diesels. The fuel is 20 cents more a liter, roughly. I don't know what our fleet discounts and stuff work out to. And you start, and the power output out of some of the gas engines is amazing. So I'm just wondering, why are we going to a diesel in this bigger truck? And have we looked, I guess, at the overall cost of ownership on this versus a gas?
through the Reeve and Council. We did decide specifically on this to go with a diesel because this would be used mainly for when we're hauling we've got our skid steers on each side, we've got the steamers that are full of water, the hydrovac, any heavy pulls, we were thinking about the diesel. Again, I talked to the mechanics. The longevity of the engine is better than gasoline. The maintenance, like they do say that the maintenance on a diesel is more. However, you're gonna go a lot longer before you get into that position, like probably double the kilometers before you start dealing with some of the significant maintenance issues. They are built as a heavier engine. The block and all those parts are heavier because it's a higher compression engine, so the quality of that is there. Power-wise, it's interesting you say that. Gasoline, a lot of them have about 450 horse, a lot of power. These have about 200 and some horse. However, the big difference in diesel versus gas is it's about the torque, not the horsepower. Horsepower is not terrific for pulling heavy loads. For getting up and going quick, horsepower is what you want. Torque is what you want for actually pulling a load. So the diesel and the fuel mileage when you're pulling doesn't really change. Where you load up a gasoline truck and you're pulling a heavy load, that fuel mileage drops. So when this is doing the work, you'll have better fuel mileage than you would with a gasoline if you're pulling any kind of loads.
Okay. All right, anyone else speaking in the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you. That is gonna bring us to, well, let's go to our delegation. So I will need,
Closed session.
yeah, I need to go in closed session on this one. I'm just trying to find the delegation. Hang on. So that's item 11.1. And this is a letter of interest for Go Broadband.
Should wait till you're off.
What's that?
Your work should be,
That's on the public part.
Sorry.
And we'd be looking for a motion to go into closed session under FOIP 16. Councillor Coulton?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we go into closed session on point 16, the Alberta Innovates application.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. I'll wait for Nikita to tell us we're clear. Okay, so we just come back from closed session. We have a few motions coming out of closed session on item 11.1.
I move that council endorses a strategic partner letter of interest for Go Broadband's Alberta Innovate application as discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Item 11.2.
Motion the council accepts the airport lease as information.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And then we have item 3 on the ICF.
Yeah, I make a motion that council accept the intermunicipal collaboration framework briefing as information.
Thank you, Councillor Colkin. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, that'll bring us to item 10.1. So this is our service tracker report. Oh, my computer's locked me out here. Our service tracker report for January 2023. locked out of my computer for a minute. Do you want?
Yeah, your worship, I think it's the standard service tracker request report that we do monthly, but one of the things I do want to highlight is if you notice the employee kudos.
Councilor Dean?
I also noticed that 86% of the service requests that are going into the service tracker were entered by staff, and only 14% were entered by residents through the website. And that ratio just seemed really skewed to me. I don't know how we get the message out to our residents, but I think if they knew about this, because there's certainly going to be lots of residents that don't, you know, they'd use it more so than calling in and having staff have to put it in. Anybody I've talked to that wasn't aware of that, when I explained it to them and show them where the link is on the website, they're always grateful and, you know, appreciative, and they like the fact that they can do it on their own time, but I think we need to do a better job of getting that information out to our residents.
You know, on that note, that's actually probably a good topic to start our Reeves message off with, Bryn. Is how to run the service tracker. Just saying. Councilor Cush.
So one question through the administration. The one out of my zone there says 582, 583. The area is maintained by Lac St. Anne. If it's part of our agreement or whatnot, but it's maintained, say, here by another county, how can we ensure that the residents or our residents are getting the service on that road? Was there any type of follow-up on that?
Yes, there was, through the chair. There was follow-up with Lac St. Anne.
Okay.
Councilor Prestige.
Through the chair to council and administration. I think there's people that look at this and say, if I do it on the service tracker, how do I know it's getting looked at? Where if they phone in and talk to somebody and they have acknowledgement that their concern is heard. Could we, when somebody puts something in here on service tracker, that there's an acknowledgement sent back to them saying your concern is heard and we are dealing with it?
Through the chair, Council Prestige, whether it's inputted by staff or through and sorry for jumping in, or through the site, everybody is contacted.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's a button of whether they want to be contacted, yes or no.
Right.
So if you're inputting it yourself, the resident, is that they can opt out and say, no, I just need to inform you, right? Or if they want a response, then when they click yes, we give them that response, so.
Councilor Dean, then Councilor Cush.
I just wanted to make council and I guess administration aware. I received a call from a bus driver who had some real concerns about I think it was Whispering Hills subdivision. There was just very icy, dangerous to turn around. I see that Range Road 121 is on here, that was part of the concern. But did that request get to administration about turnarounds and this on Whispering Hills?
Through the chair, Councilor Dean, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and it's been dealt with. She called me today.
okay, good.
And remember, this is the month of January, so if that happened in month of February, it'd be picked up.
Councilor Cush.
On a motion, the council accepts the monthly service track report as information.
Thanks, Councilor Cush. Some other discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Council reports and questions. Well, let's start with Councilor Williams.
I had an exciting meeting that I attended since our last council meeting. It was a really good meeting. They're doing a bunch of different things there. Their new scoreboard was installed. That was purchased by donation, so that's up. So people are pretty happy about that. Also bought new nets in the arena. They're pricing out a couple of different options for showers at the ball diamonds. They have lots of rodeos and weddings booked. They have a theme for the hoedown now, back to our roots, if anyone's wondering. And yeah, I think that's about all. They got some construction going on there. They have lots going on. So pretty active group there.
Okay, any questions to Councillor Williams? Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit this time. Councillor Cush.
My last couple weeks been a little bit slow. We had the MPC meeting just before this one, and then we had the online visit with Miss Reed about the 360 CAO review. And that's what I've had.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Cush? Haven't had any library ones lately?
Next week.
Next week, okay, we'll look forward to it.
Got a bunch coming up.
Okay. Councillor Wilhelm.
I haven't had any committee meetings. I just wanted to, sorry, just a dry throat. Wanted to follow up on what Councillor Dean had just commented on with the service tracker conversation. And want to give props again to the infrastructure staff and administration. Every time I've put in a service tracker request or a resident has put in a service tracker request, when I've asked them to, they've always contacted me afterwards and said their issue was dealt with. And I just want to, I've said this many times, but I want to say this is saving us a huge amount of headaches, and administration's follow up on it and the policies around it are excellent, and they make everyone look fantastic. So that's the big thing I wanted to say. Other than that, I'm pretty slow couple weeks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Wilhelm. Any questions to Councillor Wilhelm? All right. Councillor Prestige.
We had a lunch meeting with CAN4. Went very well, good information we got back from them. It was well accepted with them, and they want to continue doing meetings with us. They say this never happens in British Columbia. But it's good for us and it's good for them. Had the lunch with Chamber of Commerce. That was well attended. I would just say it was a good lunch meeting. And what was it? Well, we had our ECDev scrap plan meeting on the 6th. So we got a lot done. We're coming back on the 21st to finalize it. So hopefully everything goes good there. It's very good suggestions and comments from all the members. And other than that, it's been pretty slow. Just something that was kind of good to hear. We have a young boy in Blue Ridge. He's has Tourette's, and he's kind of having a difficult time. And some of you might have seen this on the news. The story came on the news, and when he was asked what he wanted for Christmas, he said, "I want a sewing machine." So his mom bought him a sewing machine, and he's got into the business. He's 12 years old. Got in the business of making hot and cold packs. Since the beginning of the year, he's managed to put $1,000 in the bank from selling these things. So it's a really good, feel-good story. And he just loves what he's doing. His comment was he wants to sell them to the Oilers. And Connor McDavid wants one, he'll give him a discount.
See, now there's some hardcore capitalist right there. That's great. Really brings a tear to my eye. Any questions to Councillor Preston? Okay. Councillor Dean.
Just reiterate what Councillor Preston said about the ECDEV strat plan. It's, you know, economic development is hard to quantify and hard to come up with a hard and fast task list. And we've got some really eager committee members, and they're looking for something to do. And I think we're well on our way to getting that ECDEV committee to a point where we're engaging everybody. So that was February 6th. On the 8th, I attended that same chamber meeting out at the airport, and it was a good showcase for the airport. Like Bruce said, it was really well attended, and then it followed up with a tour of the facility. And I understand there was about 15 people on the tour. And on the 10th, I attended a municipal law seminar, as discussed earlier. And then I don't know if anybody was listening to the radio this morning. Don't mean to plug 6:30 Ched, but Paul McLaughlin was on the morning news show, and he was speaking to well site reclamation, and he does such a great job of taking a complex issue and making it really understandable for everybody, and it was good information that he provided. And that's it.
Thanks, Councillor Dean. Any questions to Councillor Dean? Okay, Councillor Culkin.
Yes, same thing, February 6th, we had that ECDEV meeting, was a really good meeting, ironing out some of the things that we have to do to be effective going forward. And the one that was kind of key for me was to see that we're starting to line up the ASB, the RETA, Community Futures, and understanding that, in order for us to be effective, we have to also align with the new economic development for rural Alberta plan with the government of Alberta, of course. I had a Teams meeting on 7th, which I didn't get a whole lot out of because I kept getting kicked out of. And I was asked to be on that meeting with part of growth because of the agriculture component. On the 8th, we were here with learning how to deal with the 360 review with our CAO. On the February 9th, had a bicentennial meeting with which was really good. We finally have our Indigenous component. There was 2 people there, Barry and Kevin Mustis, I believe, and they're really eager to be part of that celebration and have a bunch of plans to set up some stuff there. The other interesting piece was that, which is really great, is that Whitecourt now wants to participate here and do something here for the send-off for the brigade for that celebration. So that was a real big plus that they chose to do that. I was invited on the 13th of February to meet with the Swan Hills ECDEV committee through both for 2 reasons, through growth, to try to, it's really important that we try to now bring back some of those folks that left it or are thinking about leaving the RETA. So what I did is I gave them a presentation on what we actually do outside of tourism. And also, after chatting with Bert, we talked about the possibilities that Swan Hills has in agriculture, which would be trying to get some of the big players that have the geothermal up there online with the people who do that kind of stuff. Probably Greg Gillum, who was at the Sightling conference, to try to get these people together so that we can start to change the legislation to make the geothermal that they have up there more viable for greenhousing and electrical generation. So it's a really good group of people who really are eager in getting some of this stuff done, and we have 2 of those members that sit on our growth board. And that, I guess, was pretty much that part of it. I spent a lot of time on the phone after the February 1st meeting with the folks that were, you know, I don't want to say necessarily opposing, but concerned about some of the conversations that we had, and they were a bit disappointed that it went the way it did, and I told them that wasn't a disappointment, because in my view, the more people that we can get engaged in a positive way, setting direction for what we as council have to make decisions for. I said that the debate that was around the table was key, and from that, one of the things that we should learn is that democracy only works is if we have public engagement, and it's not just us at the council table that make decisions. And I had a really good conversation with Mr. DeGroot on that very fact, and I said to him, I said, you know, bumping heads doesn't solve the problem. What solves the problem is bringing the issues to the table that are sometimes not easy, but we have to move forward, make the discussion. And I guess what I got out of the conversations that I had there was that we really need to come up with a public engagement strategy where we start to utilize this positive energy that was with these people that really want to see and understand that we do have to have development, but we do need to do it responsibility, and they would like to be involved in discussing that and being a part of it. And so moving forward, I think it's really important for us to get it, you know, talk to administration and get them to understand that in order for us to really know how we're going to do future development, we need to have a lot of information that's collected, and we need to probably, you know, start budgeting for that in the next couple of years so we can do that effectively. And so I would like to see us take this to governance and priorities. And I would like administration to come up with some kind of comprehensive public engagement strategy, so we identify the 4 key areas of planning for land use. The ones that I see that we've had a lot of discussion about is the airport, agriculture, recreation, and natural resource extraction. And those are the ones that public would like to be, these folks would like to be involved in to try to understand a little better. The big one though was, most of them do not understand how taxes work and how we make decisions based on taxes, the requisition, and all of those things. And until they understand that in order for us to be able to provide the services that the municipality actually supplies, they need to understand the tax structure. So if it serves a purpose, I'd like to make a motion to get administration just to come up with some kind of an idea of what a public engagement process would look like, and maybe we could bring that to G&P for discussion.
So, just to clarify, are you looking for like an open house type of form? Do you have a format in mind? Or?
I don't. I think that would be something that discussion at G&P would, once we understand what a strategy would look like, then I think at G&P we could flesh that out.
So kind of a what, how do we engage the public better on a one-to-one,
Yep.
Face-to-face basis, correct? And then we hash that out at G&P?
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. It's,
You're smiling, Mr. Frank.
Well, it's
I'm
more,
just waiting for somebody to ask me what would the administration would like to respond to that.
yeah, go ahead.
Your worship, through the Councilor Cook, and, yeah, there is money in the budget for a communication plan, right? Which would, part of that communication strategy would how you deal with public engagement, right? We also have a public participation policy that does exist and is required by legislation to have in place. I think one of the things that both administration and council, because again, I hate to always use COVID as an excuse, but for the last 2 years, we haven't had public interaction, right? And I think that we can bring that to a GMP governance and priorities meeting and have a whole discussion with the understanding that we're scheduled for the second half to do the start on the communication plan to be in place for 2024. So it's coming. It's just a matter of.
Councillor Cookie?
Yeah, I guess the way that I see some of this evolving would be from the bottom up, which means we really need to understand that we have a fairly diverse area. People see things differently in different areas, and if we understand that for land use planning and maybe setting aside ag reserves, natural resource extraction, and all of those, then what we do is we would have a map that says, this will not happen here, but this can happen here. So we don't have the discussion at the council table, which we had was, well, we gotta balance this out. No, we shouldn't be in that position. We should be in a position where we say, this is what can happen here, this is what can't. And the reason I find this important is because of the land use issues that different counties are having now with energy transition, with solar panels and such. Like, we really need to, that's one of the things that I did learn in that land use planning is that you can't do enough of that. And so we really need to understand where, where's the recreational development going to be in an area, where is the other stuff going to be?
Okay, so kind of went away from that motion, but there was a motion on the floor to bring the GMP, an idea around kind of a broader discussion around public engagement, correct?
Yep, that would serve.
Okay, so, do you need any clarification on that motion, or is that, you're good with that? How far out do you think we can start talking about this?
Well, again, I think we're tapped on March 8th meeting, right? And so we're into April, and then depending on, so probably May, if not April, May.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, do you wanna add this by May?
Yeah, if that
May
works for,
GMP?
I would add that by May that we would have the beginning of that discussion.
Okay.
May I have a formal motion, please, and thank you?
Yes. Let's see if
Okay.
we can craft that into notice of motion.
Okay, notice of motion to direct administration to develop a strategy for public engagement to look at some key land use areas.
Your worship, to Councillor Culkin, not that I'm questioning your motion, but a strategy versus a discussion at first
Yeah,
would be that
discussion.
that council have a discussion on public engagement process and what it look and process, right?
Right.
Yep. And send that to governance and priorities.
Okay. Are you,
Thinking?
Just stretching? Okay. You're not stretching.
No.
You got your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, though. What,
Through Chair Council, I think this is an important item, and given your CAO will be away for April, it should be in May.
Good catch.
okay. So we got it for May then?
I have it noted as by May 2023.
Fine, that's fine.
Yep.
You're fine
I'm
with that?
happy with that.
Okay, Counselor Kush, speaking to the motion.
Speaking to the motion, I feel that, what Councillor Coopin's trying to get out there, I think we should have that in two different motions. I think the first one about public engagement and stopping looking at that should be one on its own. And then taking a look at the, planning for like your ag zones and stuff like that should be a separate discussion. Instead of trying to put it all into one.
The way that, can you read the motion better?
If I may, I'll put on my communications hat for a moment. So council directed administration to develop a communications plan for the end of 2023. As council's aware, administration is wearing several hats at the moment, but the conversation around the communications plan has begun with the consultant. So it will take some time to develop the plan, get information from our residents on how they best receive information, look at legislation, look at our current documentation to develop the plan that works best for our municipality. So this is something that council's already directed administration to look at, prepare, and start digging through to find out exactly what Councillor Coolkin's referring to. Now, if it's specifically public engagement related to these land use areas, this is a separate component. So I think we need to really understand what we're discussing here.
See, and that's an interesting conversation, because we talked about, if you, I don't know how many people have done the EOEP public engagement course, but they talk about you're always communicating, you're not necessarily consulting. So are we, and I think what we're talking about is both there's a communication strategy that needs to be there, and also a public consultation strategy, and the two need to be a little bit different. So the consultation portion is where we're gonna start reaching out. We start doing the information around, we're going to be looking at these items. These items are going to be coming up there, we've identified them as important, we know that people want to engage with council on them, and here is the opportunity when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen, to engage on those items. And then in the meantime, we can add to them through the other information, but they're two kind of separate components as I get it. So just to clarify what we're talking about here, are we talking about consultation, or are we talking about communication?
Well, I think they're connected, and I do agree with Councillor Cush. There's a planning component, which includes public engagement, and then there's the communications piece, which is how do we do this?
Through the chair to Councillor Coolkin, when you say engagement, are you referring to consultation,
Yep.
participation?
Yep.
And I would agree that they are different, so that's why administration's querying, so we understand what council's trying to get at here.
So we had a pretty rough go in the last term, and we ended up at the Westward Center, and I think there was about 200 people there. Now, things were hot and interesting at that particular time, but we got an opportunity to actually have a conversation with 200 people that lived in the county, and it was a good, it's not comfortable when it's like that. I think if we get out in front of these communications, we can actually make it more comfortable and certainly better for the municipality. I think those were extraordinary circumstances. I'd like to stay away from the extraordinary circumstances and really get into the consult, but that type of event, and I don't know if any of you were there. I know, yeah, you were there. You didn't get to experience that. But it was,
Worship and members of council, and not, my understanding is that we'll bring back, at governance priorities, a discussion on whether it's collaboration, consultation, part of the planning process, because that's what council is, Councillor Coogan is talking about is the MDP, and there is a public engagement process built into the plan itself, right? So, and it ties into the land use plan. So we'll gather all that information for council so that they have a discussion, and as part of the communication strategy or plan, it's good information to give back to the consultant to say, here's where the direction that council is looking at going in and stuff like that. So I think I'm comfortable with the motion. I think, again, it's a discussion and again, at the governance and priorities in May.
Yep.
all right. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report, thank you.
Any questions to Councillor Copeland? Okay. All right, I'll end off with I'll start off with around the communication piece. So I got a bunch of calls, and it seems like I was the lucky guy that had all the people with these, I want to say Laidlaw. Good Lord, am I overstating myself, right? The bins. And some of these bins were put on the right of way and off their individual lots and onto county right of ways and driveways and this kind of thing. So there was some communication that went out from administration, and I got a few phone calls. And from the way I can understand it is that some of those had been there for decades. And because we're changing things all at once, it was a rapid change. And you know, it's interesting because we had this before one time where we had some pavement ground up, and I know that we talked about it at the council level. We had, and I supported all of these things, and I still do. So if you've got a garbage bin and it's on county property, it's got to go on your own property. If we made a decision to grind up some pavement and turn it back to gravel, that's the decision that we're going with. But again, on the communication side, I think we need to do a little bit better on communicating, and I'm hoping that we'll again have that conversation around how to have this communication when we change things. There are several things that still need changing in the municipality. We can do better, and that correction's going to be a little bumpy as we go through some, but we'll get there. So there's that. And I got a phone call on a possibility of doing a monthly meeting with some industry reps and municipal leaders and things like that, kind of around the end of the month, which we used to do quite a bit of, but now trying to get into out of the swing of COVID. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to partake in that. I was out at the Chamber of Commerce airport tour, so we hosted the Chamber of Commerce at the airport shop and managed to get the floor clean enough that nobody slipped, which was good. And we had lunch out there and then went on a tour of the airport. And we got to have a good conversation around air ambulance and municipal airports and where they fit. And there's actually a huge, at several rural municipalities, there's a huge piece right now around air ambulance and health services and how that all fits into rural municipalities and the distance that they are, some of them from specialized health care. So I think there's a really good conversation that's still got to occur around how some of these municipal airports factor into municipalities and how they can support both healthcare and economic development in some of these other areas. And I know I'm an airplane guy, an aviation guy, but we don't, airports are about as popular as sewage lagoons these days as far as they go. But they are an important part of the infrastructure of the province. So I'm hoping that we'll get some traction at the RMA level to get the province looking at those as a strategic piece of infrastructure that links the provinces together and makes the province a much better better place to live. On the topic of land use and renewables, that's a huge topic that we're dealing with right now around solar panels, and their companies are coming and offering individual landowners opportunities to set up renewable sources of energy on their own land. So they're paying $600-700 an acre or something along those lines, which is pretty good. And there's questions around what that's going to do to the soil. Is the land going to be able to return? Is it going to be, is the agricultural land that it's on going to be usable? Should we be doing this on brownfield? Should we be doing this on old gravel pits instead? How do we link this all together? And I think there's a huge piece on this land use that Councillor Culkin touched on. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation. I think a lot of that public feedback that we're talking about is going to link that all together. The other one is I want to know from council if you are interested in a longer visit. RMA's actually put us on the list for the RMA, and you'll have so the rural municipalities of Alberta will have the the advocacy coordinator usually comes, so you can talk to her directly. You can talk to, and the president comes as well, along with the chief operating officer of the companies, or RMA as well, Gerald. So we've got some pretty good people in the room, and I was thinking that we use this as an opportunity to kind of showcase the municipality. And did you have an idea? You said something about a tour or something, and it's
I think
a great idea.
show them the west or the east side of the RV park is a gem.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we could just bob over the hill and look at our NRE as well.
Right. So we've got some options, and I'm wondering, does council want to do a tour or a longer visit? So more than anything right now, we need to figure out with RMA, are we going to schedule a longer visit or a shorter visit? And then can the municipality plan something in the meantime to kind of showcase Woodlands County a little bit? Councilor Cush?
It was just, my point you just finished there is, if we can plan something so it's not just sporadic, going here, going there, something to actually use up the time and use it valuably to showcase what we have here, where we can actually, have time to have some decent conversations with them about some of the issues around here too would be worthwhile.
Yeah, and as a director, I've gone to a few municipalities, and they'll book a bus or something along those lines, and they'll run the council and the fire reps out and show a few things in the municipality, have a quick meeting and lunch, and then they're gone. Councilor Dean?
Yeah, just to that end, kind of further to Councillor Wilhelm's email, if we go out to Fort Assiniboine and back and we stop and we have a look, and that's pretty much, that's going to be like 2.5 hours. So if we're going to plan to dig into some issues that are important to our county, are we going to have those conversations on the bus as we travel? I think everything's accomplishable. I think everybody would like to utilize the 3 hours, but we need a plan.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, the question I'm asking right now is, do you want 3 hours with the RMA people? Because that's what I need to schedule that's the question I have from RMA right now, is do we make people available for 3 or 4 hours to spend with our council? And then we can plan something, what we're gonna do with them. Maybe it's a mill tour, maybe it's a tour of the fort. I don't know yet. Like, we'll have time to figure that out, but I need to let them know, schedule-wise, do they need more time or less? So, that's a cool thing.
I think it's incredibly valuable because RMA is the advocacy group for all of municipalities, and the better understanding they have of the diversity and some of the challenges we have. So I think that a 2, 3, 4 hour schedule is absolutely of value to us in the long term.
Councilor Dean? Good? So do we wanna go with a longer visit? Yes? Longer? Okay, well, that's what I'll tell them.
Your worship, remember understanding that you have 2 key personnel out for the, when they're coming to visit, so.
Well, we haven't approved that yet, have we?
We'll talk.
Okay. And, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Crosby.
On that date that they're coming, on my calendar, it shows we have a council meeting.
They do come on a council meeting day.
That's gonna be a short agenda, very short agenda.
But this was a short agenda.
I was just gonna say.
Okay.
You're leading the meeting, so you can make it short.
Sorry.
All right, the last one I want to touch on, and I've talked a little bit about this, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on it. But I'm not going to say I'm tired of having this conversation, because I don't mind having it. But I've been getting a lot of phone calls around some of the social media stuff that's been going on around land use planning and some of the mix-up that happened with a small rural community hiring an urban land planner that blocked and copied and pasted a bunch of urban land planning into a land use plan for rural. And I mean, the whole chicken thing, not to mix metaphors, ruffled a lot of feathers. But, and the other one that I'm getting is the 15-minute cities thing. And I think that, I don't know if other councillors are getting, well, I do know if other councillors are getting it. Some are getting it, some aren't, but we're hearing a little bit of it here and there, and I'm getting quite a few letters. I would like to be able to respond to this somehow in a way that I think that this council, we're trying very, very hard to consult as much as we can to protect property rights, to protect our landowners, to protect agriculture, to differentiate ourselves from the urban centers that have different land uses than us. And you talked about the county being different from one end to the other. I would love to have the problem sometimes of the urbans and the fact that from one end of a border to the other end of the border, they have exactly the same level of service from one end to the other. We have varying levels of service. We have varying levels of roads. We have varying levels of landscape, different soils that we're working in, different, there are roads in Fort Assiniboine that you can leave there forever and they don't move. You do the same thing around the Whitecourt area, and they're just, the ground is different. So I would like to be able to put out some kind of a response to that. I don't know whether we do it through a press release or something along those lines, but I feel like it would be nice to do so.
Your worship, if I may discuss that, I guess the point is you get this rhetoric, you get this blow up, and then it tends to subside. Do you need to bring that up when the issue is now yesterday's news, if I can use that terminology, right? There are times and place and when when Woodlands County does their land use amendments, land use bylaw amendments, there will be a strategy around that type of thing so that that doesn't occur going forward, right?
And I totally understand that, right? Why can't we communicate that? That's all people are usually asking is,
What
I
I'm
just
saying-
wanna make sure that Woodlands County does not do
Yeah.
this. And I understand, normally I'd agree with you that things bubble up and they simmer down. I honestly think that since what we went through in the last couple of years, things are different. People are different. And I think that if you really want to show some leadership on it, you can put something out saying, this is our process, this is what it's gonna look like, we will hold these things, and this is where we'll come at it from. And I don't think that's an overly, again, a lot of people just don't understand the process. I've worked with people that are in some areas of local government that don't understand the process. So I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I think it would be fairly simple to do. Councillor Dean?
So are you suggesting, like you identify a couple hot button topics, if you will, and then put it on the website, put it on the county's Facebook page?
Yeah, probably something like that. More of a press release than a communication directly from,
But where does it go? Like, how does it get to public?
well, that's what I mean, a press release.
That appears where?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, all of our press releases are released to, there's a specific list which includes media, gets posted on social media, the website. There are very specific channels that a press release has to go through. General communication just goes through social media and the website, but press releases get pushed out through media.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'd support that.
And I defer to council's judgment on this. I want to know what people think, so.
Well, like coming back to that land use planning that originated in a neighboring municipality, as our CAO said, it was very, very topical for a short period of time, and it burned really hot. And I'm sure everybody got asked, I got asked, and I just told them that we were not gonna do that. And that our land use bylaw was up for review, and when it came due, the public would have plenty of time. And I got zero pushback. No following comments, yeah, but it was just nothing.
I didn't either, but for every person that's asking the question, there's 10 or 15 more that have it burning in the back of their head that didn't ask it. That's all.
But they might have read it.
Read where?
Well, so my response on social media, one person asks, how many people read it?
Okay, and if individual councilors are responding on social media on behalf of Woodlands County, then we've got trouble. That's why I'm saying we need a press release.
Yeah, well, we had this conversation at a GMP, and I asked if we could have some sort of official line of communication, and the answer was, we don't really need it, so that's why I respond on social media.
Councillor Wilhelm and Councillor Coker.
I guess my question's gonna come around. When is the decision made to come up with a press release about A or B or C, right? There's always, every week, there's gonna be a squeaky wheel on social media screaming about something that has nothing to do with Woodlands County. Like, when do we determine that we should be doing a press release to address a short-term hot-button topic? Like, that's, how much of administration's time are we gonna waste doing that? That's where my question comes. I understand communication's very important, and these people think that something like this is gonna happen in Woodlands because they don't understand our policies and procedures, but how many times are we gonna have to send out a press release saying, no, we're not taking your chickens away, or no, we're not turning Woodlands into a 15-minute city? Like, what determines the boundaries of when we're gonna send out a press release about something like this?
Well, I would say the discussion we're having right now. That's what the council's for.
Right, but so, on the flip side of that, isn't also our jobs as the representatives for the people in our community to, we don't have to tell them proprietary information, but our job is to communicate with our residents, and if they have an issue, we can discuss the fact that, no, this is not something that we're doing. Like, I mean, that's not breaking, I think, any bounds of communications. We're, us as residents, or sorry, us as counselors, our job is to talk to the residents, and if they have those concerns, we should be able to say, you shouldn't be concerned about that. That shouldn't be breaking any kind of code of conduct for a counselor. Our job is to communicate with the residents. And it would be so much easier, in my opinion, for us to, if you've got, because it typically ends up being 3 or 4 people freaking out, to just go to those people and say, listen, I understand you're worried about this. This is not something to be worried about in our region. And you nip it in the bud there, rather than you give credence to that type of situation when you put a press release out about it. They're like, oh, why are they putting a press release out about this? Is this something we do have to be worried about? You know what I mean? When you address it officially, all of a sudden people are like, oh, they are officially addressing this now. There was something to be worried about.
No, I know, just really quickly, I disagree with that, that you're creating something. Again, I think we're in a slightly different time now. And I think there's a way to address this. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about where things are going right now. And I don't see that it's a bad thing to communicate the process to people as a county, as a council. As an individual on social media, I could say, hey, I don't endorse this, but I can't speak for Woodlands County. And if I am, I'm doing it wrong because we haven't had the discussion at a council table. So with that, I'll recognize Councillor Culkin.
Yeah, I have to agree with Reed Burrows. And I think it's very simple. I don't think it's as complicated as we're making it, but it can become complicated. Like with this group of councillors, I really don't have a problem because I think there's a lot of cool heads here that usually would be able to say the right things. But the problem is that if we set a precedent as individuals that we speak for council, or even suggest that we may be speaking for council, that creates a problem. And so I think that, when we have a hot button item, it's very simple. Press release that says, no, this is not the way Woodlands County does it. That's how leadership roles are, like, that's the way I do, no, this isn't the way I do it, sorry. And I think, those, if there really is because I got a lot of those on this neighboring municipality, not just one, like 20. And so I didn't respond to them, and I'm, being roasted for that. So I think that we have to communicate to our residents that says, no, that's not how we do it. It's that simple.
Councillor Williams?
I think there's a difference between responding for council and explaining the process, though. Like I don't do much on social media really at all anyways, but explaining the process, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, that's what I did. I got a lot of phone calls about it, and I just explained how we do our land use bylaws. I didn't say, we'll never do that, or we would, you know what I mean? Like, it's, when we go to, this is what we do, this is the process, like, they probably got some bad recommendations back from a consultant or whatever, but it's I don't think, as long as you're not speaking for council, explaining the process, I don't think there's a problem with that.
Councilor Cush?
I've, my opinion, I got nothing against putting information out, and I don't think it's a bad thing, you know, say, explaining the process, because I think that's a lot of it is the public doesn't understand the process. As far as, you know, like Councillor Wilhelm's point about, you know, like, you'll have a hot topic, you know, it keeps coming up, and we had a couple of years ago, the big one about the possibility of gun and ATV bans. And that one was, we didn't put anything out on that. I had way more phone calls and emails and texts and stuff sent to me over that one than this. And that one was, you know, something that was you know, a conversation from within our, I guess, our community versus something coming from a neighbor. But on the point of putting out an information piece about how the process works so that the general public can understand, I don't think is a bad thing. I've had communication with residents who they try to, we'll say they're trying to understand how it works or how something like that could come out or be put into place, and you have to explain to them. It's like, well, it's not just something that you put out and it comes back and we just send it off. Like, there is consultation, there is stuff that comes up with large changes, and just something like that where the residents know, I don't think is bad.
Right. Councillor Prestich?
I think the biggest thing is we have to have a common response on something like this. If it comes up, we should have the Reeves say, this is what we're gonna say, and if you're gonna respond to it, this is what you say, because that is what council says. Not everybody doing their own, because you may come up with a response, the other counselor comes up with a response that could be two different, and those people could be communicating together. So it has to be a common response, and the best way to do that is through the Reeve.
And the issue that, or the thing that I guess I'm coming up with, you talk about, you know, the amount of time. I've got at least 10 inquiries on this, dealing with, you know, 15, 20, something like that. There's a lot of inquiries, and has anyone not got any? You didn't get any? You got a pretty cool district there. That's good.
This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah. So, you know, and the fact that it's touched everybody, that's the only reason that I'm saying. And again, this is more about process on our end and trying to communicate that with people.
Your worship, members of council, and again, I understand the conversation that is going on. Your website has all the processes. If you direct everybody to the planning part of our website, it takes you to that, right? And it explains the planning process. So again, I'm not trying to say no to it. I'm just saying is part of your job is to answer those inquiries when they come up. They're gonna come up in flurries. You know, the next item might be something that came out of this council meeting, I don't know, right? Or from some other council meeting. You're gonna have them all the time. I think what I suggest is that as much as you wanna react, is you gauge it by how much that you're gonna continue to get pressure on, right? And to my knowledge, we had 2 days of, and that's it, right? It's now moving on.
Councilor Dean?
So I'm struggling to understand the difference between responding to a question on a phone call and responding to a question on social media. If somebody calls me and says, is this happening? Am I not allowed to say, no, it's not happening? Like, do I have to say, well, wait, there's gonna be a press release come out on that? I
Don't say that.
I don't understand. How is it different?
Again, I'm trying to get a more concerted message. Again, if I can sit there and type all day on social media, and I guess that's what I need to do. I'll start using my Facebook page, and I'll start down the social media end of things, and I'll just start responding, because I'm trying to get council together to actually give me a message and allow me to have some communication, and I can't get it, you know? Instead, I'm getting conflicting, it feels like I'm the one that can't communicate, kind of thing. So if that's the way council wants to work social media, then we'll start working it that way. Okay. I guess we're done, so.
Well, just to follow up on that, why do you, it's probably a conversation for another time, but I don't understand why you feel you can't speak for council. I thought we've discussed that many times before and said that we are almost on all fronts, well behind what your messaging and mindset is on things.
Well, again, I think this is a bigger issue. I don't think people are worried about, the inquiries that I got is they're not actually worried about 15-minute cities and chickens. They're not worried about that. What they're worried about is what direction is their leadership trying to go in. That's what they're worried about, you know?
And you're a leadership, so why don't you tell them?
No, I'm one member of a council. And we haven't really had that discussion is all. So,
Yeah.
Councilor Dean?
And so, I see the question you're asking, and there's a difference between somebody asking, what direction is this group going, and are you doing this? And quite frankly, you know, what's it been, 16 months that this council has been elected? I think there's been two things that I've responded to on social media. Both of them were really hot button issues, and as soon as I gave them a sensible response, didn't get one more question on the social media page, no more texts, it was just one. And that's different. So the chicken issue is different than what are you guys thinking about which direction you're gonna go? And so I fully support a periodic kind of State of the Union address, if you will, on, hey, there's some stuff out in the news. This is what council is doing with them. That I think that's a great idea. When I asked our communications director, how does it reach people? You know, you still might not hit your audience because it doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna source that wherever that's on. So, but having that is a good thing.
And it's out there.
But there's a difference, right? When I had a member of my area text me and said, have you looked at such and such? And I'm like, no. So I looked, and there were 50 comments. And this gentleman was actually defending me because the person was asking me the question. And I mean, I don't look at Facebook every day, let alone every hour.
Yeah.
And so when I did, I looked at it and I went, oh, well, no, we're not doing that. And that's all I said.
Yeah.
And done.
I think we have to go back and, John is our voice of council. But we are, all seven of us are council, so he speaks for what we decide for him to say. It's not that he can make up stuff on his own, because then he's not speaking for council. So it has to be what this group decides, is what he says.
Yeah, and I take that fairly seriously, like, I hope you appreciate that. I guess that's the feeling that I get anyway, so.
But by the same token, Bruce, if somebody calls you with a question, you're gonna answer their question, right? You're not gonna wait and get consensus on council of what you're gonna say, you're gonna tell them. Like, it happens all the time, I'm sure. Do people not call you or text you with questions?
Yeah, I get a few,
Yeah. And do you respond to them?
if I know the answers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, you say you'll get back to you with an answer.
And like what I'll do is if somebody emails me a question, I send it to Gord. CC Gord on it, and that's the end of it. I don't answer the question, I'll look into it. I don't give him an answer. And, well, Gord, I call you lots of times on, what should we do?
Anyway, that pretty much concludes my report. Now that we had this nice, easy conversation. Any questions for me? No? All right.
I'll
Councilor
make a
Crestwich?
motion that council accept council reports and questions as information.
Thank you, Councilor Crestwich. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. That brings us to our CAO's report.
Your worship, members of council, just quickly, the June workshop dates that council did the doodle poll is, the only date available is June 13th for 6 out of 7. Possibility of one individual coming on board and making that date happen. No. So we can't find any dates in June, so we're moving on to July or August.
Right. Okay.
Unless the individual is okay that we do it without that individual, but that's up to that individual.
Can you email that individual?
That individual can be emailed.
Thank you.
Can you wink at that individual? So we know who we're talking about?
The individual has already responded, thank you.
Very great. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing, and other than the items in closed session, I know we've had some correspondence with council in regards to the sale of public lands on Tower Road. We're in the process of continuing working with public lands to make sure that the interests of the municipality is protected, and that includes legal access to title land. And that's the biggest issue that we have in regards to that sale or the creation of those lots. So Ms. Ludwig is making I would say very good progress with the public lands people to rectify the situation. And once we've got a final decision, we'll let council know. And then everything else, we're good. We gotta go into closed session.
Any questions for Mr. Frank?
Yeah, just on that note, so that's a public auction, and so an individual has acquired land, and now it's just going to auction, and anybody can buy this land?
Subject to the individual that held the grazing lease has first rights to match that.
To match it, okay.
Plus $1 or whatever.
So like a reserve bid for the wood.
Well, he gets last right, so if you bid $1 million, he can do $1,000,001 or something, and then he has the right to it.
But he physically has title to that property right now?
No, the Crown does.
It's Crown.
The Crown still has title?
Crown
Yeah.
still has title.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, the individual does not. He gets last right of refusal, I guess, if that's the term.
First right.
First right of refusal.
We're not, so last rush.
Yeah. It's been a long night, your worship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else for Mr. Frank? Counselor Cush?
Move the CAO report as information.
Thank you, Counselor Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have one item to deal with.
Make a motion, move into committee of the whole under point 19.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? All right.
Okay.
Today, I mean.
Let us know.